Welcome to the Competition-Free Marketing Program. I hope you have come into this program with high expectations to see dramatic improvements in your business, because you will not be disappointed. This program was designed to unlock the success of your life. Let's use as an example, if I were to hand you a combination lock, and you look at the lock and it has a dial on the front, and if you look at the dial, you'll find that there actually is places for 40 numbers. It goes from 0 to 39. And it requires, to open this properly without damaging the lock, it requires that you were to have 3 of these numbers turned in the correct sequence, and it would open the lock. So if you were to do the math, that would be 40 times 40 times 40 equals 64,000 possible ways of turning the combination. And only one of those is going to open the lock. If I were to ask you, could you open this? What would you respond? Many people would just look at that and just say, no, 1 out of 64,000 possibilities of opening it? No way am I going to struggle on that. But if I were to say, I'll tell you what, if you can open this lock without damaging it using the combination, if you can open it, I will pay you $1 million. Now what would you think? Well, at that point, most people say, $1 million? I'll do that. And some people would approach it at, well, let's just start turning numbers. And if they were to do that, it is very unlikely that they are going to hit upon that 1 in 64,000 by just random luck. But there would be a way that if you use a logical plan that you would find it in time. And that is that you start out with the plan that you're going to start with 0, 0, 0. Try to open the lock. If it doesn't open, then you try the next one. 0, 0, 1. Try it. Doesn't work, try again, keep on going, and hopefully well before you get to the time that you get to 40, 40, 40, in other words, all 64,000 possibilities, you will have found the correct combination and opened the lock. This is very similar to how business works, is there are so many ways of doing it wrong that people get bogged down and they run out of time, energy, money, and just plain desire because they're trying all of the wrong combinations and they haven't hit on the successful one, at least not yet. But if I were to give you, let's go back to the combination lock, a piece of paper that had 3 numbers written on it and say, try this out. I think this might be helpful to you. You try those 3 numbers, try the lock, and find that it actually opened the lock. Would that be hard or not? And you would say, well, that was very easy. You say, where's my $1 million? But you see, at this point you go, well, it was very easy. Matter of fact, anybody given those 3 numbers and knowing how to turn them correctly, the right sequence going to the right and the left, anyone can open the lock. And it would be very simple. But if you didn't have those numbers, then it's very tough. What this program does, this competition-free marketing program, is this is what's going to lay out the correct combination to open the lock of business success. You're in the carpet cleaning business. So we're out there, I'm assuming that you're trying to make this work as a carpet cleaner. So it wouldn't make, at least these days, it sure wouldn't make any sense to think about that you had to go design your own truck mount machine so that you can go clean carpets. Because somebody has already done that for you, and you're not a mechanic, you're trying to be a carpet cleaner, it would make no sense for you to go back and try to reinvent the wheel. Nor would it make sense for you to say, oh, I'm going to go and create my own cleaning solutions. Now, this has already been taken care of by specialists in the field who have gotten it all figured out, and these are right there. So what you need to do is go and focus on cleaning carpets. But in the very same way, why would you want to go and try to create your own marketing plan when quality marketing plans already exist? Now, there are many business and marketing experts out there who are very willing to share their wisdom with you. Unfortunately, you don't have the time, energy, and sometimes the ability to make the hundreds of decisions necessary to implement one of these business marketing plans. This competition-free marketing program solves that very problem. Now let's go back and look at a couple of things. There is a couple of qualifications. First of all, I am making the assumption that you can clean carpets and that you do a consistent quality work cleaning carpets, and that you're expecting to get paid a fair price for the work that you do. So in other words, you're not a bait and switch company trying to rip people off. Let's assume that you know how to do it, or if you're brand new, that you're learning how to do it. The other very important qualification is this program is designed for you trying to build up a majority of your business in the residential market. If you're looking at having large commercial accounts, this program probably isn't going to be all that helpful to you. So what we're looking for is that you expect to do quality work for the customer and that you're focusing in on residential. Now, what this program will provide for you is we are going to help you look extremely professional. Now, I have been an instructor for teaching the carpet and upholstery cleaning classes for a number of years, and I have found that there's been a lot of people I've had as students who are wonderful technicians, that I would trust them out in any job, that they would do an absolutely quality job. But unfortunately, they did not look like the professionals that they were. They didn't quite see the value in that, or they just didn't know how to go about doing it. So in their customers' eyes, they did not look all that professional. This program is going to do is going to help you, a good technician, look like the professional you are. It is our job to make you look good. The other thing that you're going to get from this program is you're going to get a quarterly consumer newsletter, and this will define you as the expert in carpet and upholstery to your customer. And you're also going to find that this newsletter is going to become a very vital piece in the marketing and follow-up programs that we're going to have for your customers. There's also going to be over 28 customized marketing pieces of material and tools that you're going to be able to use in your business. And these are all made for you and for your business. And these are also made so that they can be professionally printed, or if, let's say, you're just starting out and you're a little short on budget, these are all made so that they can also be printed on your home or office computer and printer. Also, we're going to lay out for you a business plan. We're going to help you think smart and how to get the goals that you need to have, and all these things work properly for your business. We're going to lay out for you a completely different way and a view of marketing. This is we call the competition-free marketing plan. You're going to find that this plan is going to give you the ability to break away from the addictive and expensive traditional advertising that so many carpet cleaners get hooked on. As we get customers through this program, you're going to find that you're going to be able to develop an incredible loyalty with these customers, that they will want to stay with you even as you raise your prices. Through this program, we're going to help you focus in on what is profitable and also what's enjoyable. We're going to get you into nicer homes and focus in on doing carpet maintenance as opposed to trying to always being restoring this carpet from something that should be thrown away to try to make it look like new. And through this approach of competition-free marketing, this will save you a lot of money so that you don't have to be putting it into that expensive traditional advertising. Something else that's very new with this program is we're using a whole different approach of consulting. We're using what we call the makeover approach. This is an approach where instead of you getting bogged down and doing all of the details and making the decisions, you're going to be able to let the experts do the job. You want to realize this is always your business. You are always in control. You oversee everything that happens in your business. The other thing is that we're not looking to change you at all. We're not going to try to make you into a salesman. We're not trying to get you to do things that you don't want to do. Not at all. All we're doing is getting you to understand the plan, and then in the appropriate place, you just sort of step back. You're going to let the experts come in and do what they do best. And they're going to be able to relieve you of making hundreds of decisions and taking care of a lot of little details that you just don't have the time or interest in doing. And you're going to see that this is how we're going to get very, very rapid results and changes in your business. This program provides you with convenient audio CD training. So as you're driving around in your van, you can be listening to in-depth training sessions on business. We're going to get into very detailed plans that I don't think you've probably ever heard anywhere else in the industry, talking about how to use pricing as a tool. How do you price things? How do you rate and groom your customers? How do you get more referrals? We're going to go into depth on all of these and many other topics. There are also going to be training CDs that go into each one of these marketing tools that we're going to be providing for you, explaining how they work, how to make changes and modify them, and how to get them printed and used. You're also going to get one other thing that is going to be of immense value to you, is that for 12 months you will have your own personal coach. You get 12 months of hand-holding assistance to help you implement this very program. You're going to find that instead of getting this whole program all in one box, it'll just possibly get set up on a shelf and you wonder, where do I begin? Instead, we give it to you in pieces. And you get one piece at a time, and your coach is going to help you implement that piece. And then when that's set up, we're going to get going on the next piece. And we'll be able to handle it at a very manageable rate. He's there to encourage you and give you support and answer questions, and also just to hold you accountable to make sure that we keep working on the business, not get hung up working in the day-to-day routine of running a carpet cleaning business. Now, this seminar that you're going to be listening to is going to go into laying out the vital business concepts that will help you work smart. This will also give you an overview of the competition-free marketing plan. We're going to show you how by changing your image on paper will greatly increase your value to your customer. We'll explain how building a quality and consistent relationship building system will enable you to hold on to and develop more new customers. We're also going to show you how we can lay out a growth plan that consists of 5 separate steady streams of quality new customers coming into your business. By the end of this 12-month program, you will see dramatic improvements to your business and feel far greater pride in what you have created. Now let's get into the program. In this section of Working Smart, we're going to look at the foundation of what makes up business success. If you study successful people, you'll very quickly find that success is not a natural thing, and that's why so few people actually succeed. For success to happen, it requires that you do things that you would not naturally tend to do. So if you want to succeed, what you need to do is figure out what are those things and then do them. These things asking us to do are not necessarily hard or unpleasant. They're just out of the normal choice of decisions that we would make if left to our own. So our goal is in this business, and to help you succeed in your business, is not to get you to work harder. Because the people can work very, very hard and then have nothing to show for it if they're not doing the right thing. So instead of working harder, although we might need to work hard, but the goal isn't to work harder. Instead, it's to work smart. To work smart means that we have to have a plan. There has to be some thought out idea of where are we going and what are we trying to accomplish. It's quite amazing to me that so few businesses have any sort of written plan to make the businesses work. In all reality, most owners probably spend far more time planning their annual vacation than they ever spend in planning where their business is going to go. And this is very sad, but this is also reflected in the number of failures in business across all industries. So what we're going to do in this section here is we are going to lay out an example of a business plan. Now, I am going to have to find one example because some of the people listening to this are after large businesses and some people after very small business with no employees, and what you want to accomplish can be such a variety that we have to find just some example that we're going to work from. And so what we're going to lay out is an example of an employee-free business that nets $100,000. and that's $100,000 before paying personal taxes. And that's going to be our example. So if you need to make changes for it because you're after something else, please feel free, but realize that this is a model. You can change different aspects of it to reach the personal goal that you're after. What's going to be very important is that we start with a vision. A vision of what would your business look like when you consider it successful. Once you have some kind of idea on what that vision would look like, then you work backwards to figure out what will you need to do to get there. That's just as if you were trying to plan to drive somewhere across the country. You have to decide where you're going and then what's the route to get there. It's a very logical thing. We run our lives that way. So we just do this in business also. So we're going to have to ask some very significant questions. One is, what does that vision look like? And we're going to talk about that. We also have to ask some very important questions that we must make a decision on. And one of those would be, are we going to be a large business with multiple trucks and employees? Or are we going to be a small business? We're going to look at a model, and this is where we're going to work with the magic numbers. We also have to look ahead and see what kind of expenses are reasonable for attaining the goals that we're shooting for. We need to look at what is our target market going to be. Now this is very important. As we get to that, you'll find that if you don't choose that intentionally, you find out that you're trying to service a whole lot of people and you cannot do that profitably. Along with that target market, you have to think about, well, what services can I provide to take care of the needs of that market? And then along with that, we have to figure out how are we going to price. And then once we get that established, then we have to look at the whole element of how are we going to find these customers who are going to purchase our services. So as we look at this, remember, this is just a model that we're going to use, but it's going to be an employee-free business that will net $100,000. So if you have, this is just a roll so that we can go through and use this as an example, and then you can make the changes that you need to make in this to meet your personal needs. So our first thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at having a vision. What would your business look like if it were successful? And let's see if we can develop one of those very easily for you. What is the vision for your business? What is your business going to look like when it's successful? Now, we could spend all day talking about the theories on what different elements that go into a vision statement and try to brainstorm on what would be good ideas. But this would take longer time than I'm willing to put into this at this point. But it is a very important topic. But I found a way, I think we can take a major shortcut. And what I have is a vision statement that is a fill-in-the-blank vision statement. And what I hope to accomplish with this is I want you to see the value of a vision statement, and I want you to fill it out to meet the needs that you're looking to accomplish with your business. But the way we're going to do it is you go in and you just fill in the appropriate blanks, the numbers and the things here that are left out, and you'll find that you'll have a pretty good vision statement for your company and for where you're trying to go. What I highly encourage you to do is actually do this in writing and then add some things or take out the things that aren't appropriate, but make this personalized to your business and then handwrite it and use that as an example and post it somewhere that you can see it on a daily basis. This is what you want your business to look like 2, 3, maybe 4 years down the road. So this isn't what it looks like today. This is what we want it to look like when we arrive. So we can get at a certain point in time and say, hey, we have finally arrived. And if you don't have that vision, what happens is you end up going nowhere. This is going to steer us in the right direction. What you start with today might not be what you end up with in 3 or 4 years from now. You might make changes and that's fine. But the idea is every day you know where you are going, and at any time you can make changes in that path. But every day you have to have some sort of plan. Where is it we're going? So what I'm going to do is read through this vision, and it's in your workbook, and I'm going to fill in the appropriate blanks to build our model of a business that's employee-free that would net $100,000. So let's read through this vision, and work with me here and how would you answer these questions, and then I'm going to want you to go back and actually fill this in on your own. So let's look at the vision. And before I get into that, I want you to see that as we do this, I try to fill in some of the details so that you can actually see a picture. This isn't just numbers. You want to get a feeling about it, and that's how a good vision is written. So let's look at it now. Here we go. The vision is, I am an extremely successful owner-operator of a residential carpet and upholstery cleaning business. My spouse is not involved in the business. I have no employees. I enjoy working Mondays through Fridays, and I'm annually scheduled for 6 weeks' time off from work. I earn a net annual income before taxes of $100,000. I am proud of my business and what I do. I am respected in the industry and am recognized as one of the best owners and cleaners. My business consistently performs high-quality work. My clients are primarily professionals and 2 career couples. They are all a pleasure to work for and live in above-average homes. My clients are located within a 20-minute drive. I have good and reliable tools and equipment. When I am not working, I don't have to think about work. I do no paid advertising. All of my work comes from repeat clients and referrals. I have a minimum charge of $100 and charge 32 cents per square foot for carpet cleaning and $25 per linear foot for upholstery cleaning. My business creates an hourly revenue of $100. The date this vision will be a reality will be, and now this is where you would put the date. Again, this is not today. This is somewhere in the future, be it 2 years, 3 years, maybe 4. And then it's very important is that you sign this vision. You're claiming this as yours. So how does this sound? Filling in your appropriate answers in those spaces, does that start to give you a feel for what the business is going to look like a few years now out in the future? If you do just this one form, putting together and filling in the blanks in this vision, you will have done something that less than 10% of the business owners in the country have taken the time to do. So please do this because that's what we're shooting for. All right, now we need to look at some of those very important decisions that will need to be made to make this vision a possibility. Let's look at the first important question, and that is, what is the size of our business going to be? This is a question that people try to do 2 things at the same time, and they end up in a tremendous amount of trouble. You cannot walk on 2 sides of the street at the same time. And if you try to do that, you're going to find that your whole business is going to crash and burn so quickly because you're trying to play by 2 sets of rules and trying to accomplish 2 different sets of things. It doesn't work. So you need to decide one way or the other. Just like we had talked about the vision, you can always change it anywhere along the way, but from day to day, you can only be on one side of the street or the other. You cannot try to do both, or you will fail. So the question is, are you going to be big or are you going to be small? So the design on how we work on the business is going to be very, very different depending on how you answer that one question. Let's look at 4 elements just to hopefully give you a little bit of a feel for how different it would be for which answer you have. The 4 things we're going to look at is profit, the role of the owner, time, and expenses. So let's look at those one at a time. How would looking at profit be different if you're a small business, let's say a one-man operation with no employees, versus a multi-truck business? Well, in profit in a large business, the way a large business works is you use your employees to leverage your time. And the idea is you have a lot of employees out there, each making a tiny bit of profit. But when you put them all together, you end up with a large total amount of profit. But each one of those employees was only making a small percentage of profit on his efforts. So this is the idea on how you make a lot of money, is you leverage your time, you use the employees, each one, in each thing that you do to make a little bit of profit, and when you put it all together, it adds up to be a lot, and then the owner does very well. But if you're a small business, how can you go out there and run a business that has only a little bit of profit on it if you're the only employee? You have nothing to leverage if you're the only employee. So you have to decide, if you want to be big, then it just takes a little bit of profit off of everything you do. But if you're going to be small, you have to make not a little bit of profit, you have to make a huge profit. Otherwise, it will not be worth going out on your own in business. An example of where this would come in is if you decided to do commercial work. So generally in commercial work, it normally requires having a lot of employees to do that, and the people that you'd be quoting with are probably having crews to go out to do the job. The way they make money is they don't have to charge as much per square foot because they have multiple people doing it with one supervisor, and by their combined efforts, they're able to make a great deal of profit. But if you had to go out by yourself and do that as the owner, and you're only charging, let's say, 8 or 10 cents per square foot to do the cleaning, there would be such a little amount of profit on it after you paid yourself a salary that it wouldn't make it worth doing. So that's because there is such a small amount of profit. It makes sense if you have crews out there that you're leveraging your time, but if you're by yourself, that just doesn't work out. That's why if you're in a small business, it sure does not make sense to go into doing commercial. You want to stay on residential because the residential profit margin can be so much greater than most commercial work. So looking at profit is very different from large and small. If you're a large business, you can get away with small amounts and small percentages of profit. But if you're a small business, you have to have huge percentage of profit to make it worth your while. The next element that we're going to contrast is the role of the owner. What's the difference between the role of the owner for a large versus a small business? Well, the role of the owner in a large business is to be the person in charge who puts together and oversees all the systems to make the business work. Our real goal is that we work ourselves out of a job if we're trying to run a large business. We're trying to get it so our business runs on systems and that we do not have to be there to make it function smoothly. That's when you know you have a good business, is when the owner doesn't even have to be there and it actually continues to grow. That's the sign of a good, large business. The worst thing that you could have happen if you're trying to grow a large business is to have customers insisting on having you, the owner, come out and service them. That's not a productive use of your time. You need to be overseeing the business and plotting out how to make it bigger and how to keep it running smoother and developing systems. But this is not the way the role of an owner of a small business would be. Actually, what you find out in a small business, that this fact that the owner is the person coming out doing the cleaning for the customers, this is your greatest asset. So you sure don't want to pretend you don't exist when you are the only person there. Let me ask you a question. If you had the choice as a customer of having the owner out to do some work for you or his best employee, which would you choose? And you should be choosing, you'd probably want the owner out there because you feel like you would probably get the best job. So sure don't want to hide that fact that you're the owner if you're a small business and if you're the one who will be doing the work. You want to let that be known. You want to let everybody know that because that's what gives you a huge advantage over the larger companies. And larger companies, you need to realize that that's the advantage of the small one, is that the owner gets to go out and take care of it, where we're sending employees out as a large business. So that's why it's going to be very important that we try to look very small as a service business. Looking big, it really isn't very helpful when it's the type of service business that we have here, where we actually go out to the house and into their home where they feel very vulnerable. They want a small business. That's really the ideal state. So if you're a small business owner, you want that to be your major selling point, is you, the owner, are the one who will be servicing that customer. The next element is time. A large business, time is not all that important because we're going to leverage time. We're going to hire people to do all of these jobs for us, and as long as we're making a little bit of profit off of each one, we're going to benefit. But if you're an owner-operator, you have to do it all. Your time is very limited. You only have a total of 24 hours in any given day, and after that, there just is not any more time. Plus, if you want to survive past a week or two, you're going to have to sleep and have some personal time. So every minute you have is of extreme value. So if you have to give up a lot of time going out giving quotes, a lot of times running around taking care of problems, you're going to find that's going to take away from your revenue producing opportunities, and that is not going to be productive. So you have to look at your time as very, very valuable, and every minute you spend, you better be making the maximum amount of time, income coming in from that, because if you don't make the money, no one else is. So how you view the time, if you're a large business, you get to leverage lots of other people's time. You just have to focus in that you're making a little bit of profit off of each hour they're putting in. But as the owner, you only have X number of hours, and they better be darn productive because no one else is creating revenue for you. So how you view your time is going to be very different. The final element that we're going to contrast here is your expenses. Now, if you're a big business, you're thinking about developing systems. You have to have an office because you don't want 4 or 5 employees coming to your house. That just wouldn't make sense. You need an office. You need somebody to answer the phones. You're going to need managers. The infrastructure for a large business is very, very expensive. But the idea is that you will be making a lot of revenue by having that in place, and it also gives you the freedom to be able to walk away from your business and still be making money. But if you're a small business, you can't do that. Because the larger your expenses are, that means you personally have to go out and clean carpets just to pay for that expense. So you have to be very, very careful of all of your expenses. It would not make any sense at all to have a separate office if you're the only person in the business. You should be working from your home. And it's not to say that you can't spend money. You want to spend money wisely is what we're going to be focusing in on as a small business. But you want to keep the expenses down to a minimum and think them through. There are certain things that's very important that you spend money on, but they should be wise decisions and not just putting it down because, oh, you want to look impressive, because remember, it's coming off of your sweat. By whatever expenses you purchase through the business, you have to produce the revenue to pay for it. So what we would like to do is have as low of a expenses as possible, but make sure that we have all of the things we need to work properly so that we can generate the most revenue. So there's a balance going on there, but very different if you're big and small. So the point of all of this is you must decide, are you currently, today, looking to be a big business or a small business? Because how you design that business is going to be very different depending which way you choose. If you do not choose and you try to be a little bit of both, you're just starting a business but pretending you're big, unless you have somebody backing you with a whole lot of money, that will not work. So start small. Be successful small. And believe me, if you can be successful small, growing will be very easy. But don't start out thinking you're going to be big and have the office and the hired help and all of this if you don't have any revenue coming in, because it's all going to be on you, and that means that's money that is not in your pocket. So you must decide now, big or small, and a year from now you can change it. I've seen people having multiple trucks and downsizing to be an owner-operator. And I've also seen owner-operators being very successful and say, let's grow and be big, and they're successful at transitioning, and they take on a new different path, and they make those changes as needed. But you must decide where you're going, and every day you have to know, am I being big or am I being small? Let's look at the model. This is going to be where the magic numbers come in. the magic numbers are going to help us decide what are we going to need to bring in the way of revenue to reach our goals. So let's look at the page that has the magic numbers on it. Our example here, once again, is to net $100,000 from the business. Some people just start off saying, well, let's see how much money I can make. That's not how we do it. We would never get anywhere if we're trying to drive our car across the country if we said, well, let's just get out there and see where we go and not think about which freeway you want to get on. So let's look at the magic numbers in a logical approach. The first question is to start, like I said, where is it we want to end up? How much money do you want to be making at the end of the year, 2 or 3 years out? Remember, this is not current. This is what we're looking at. This is going to correspond to our vision statement that we had earlier. So our example is going to be, I want to net $100,000 from the business. So that's a pretty good goal, so that's what we're shooting for. Now, does that mean all I have to make is $100,000 in the business and I get to keep it all? No, there's going to be some business expenses that go along with it. So let's figure out, what are those business expenses going to come out to? If you turn over and look at the next page, you're going to see that there is some annual overhead expenses. So I've laid out for you an example of what a employee-free business expenses should be. Now, this is to be a little bit of a guide for you. Compare your numbers to what I have here, and if they're way off, you want to ask yourself, why is it so different? And it changes a little bit as time goes on. It's like right now, I think insurance keeps going up every year. But you want to look at those and say, should be a pretty reasonable for a small business and the expenses. And if you look on that page and compare your numbers, hopefully you come out somewhere around there. But it would be very reasonable that the expenses would come out to around $32,000 for an owner-operator business. And we could go into talking about each one of these numbers, and you can do that with your coach. That might be very helpful. But right now, let's just sort of assume this is just an example that our business expenses for a year, assuming that we're at that 3 years down the line here, that we're going to have all of these expenses, that would come out around $32,000. So looking back on the magic numbers page, so we want to say we want to have an annual income that we take home of $100,000, plus we now have to add what is our business expense going to be for the year, and we add in $32,000. The total revenue that we need to create in the business would then be $132,000. So we look at the year and say, that's how much money we want to make. Well, that seems like a lot of money. We have to break this down into a little smaller chunk so we can know, is that reasonable for us to attain? So what we want to do is let's divide this into weeks. We're going to make an assumption here, is if you look down at the bottom part below the magic numbers, I have across here says 40 weeks of work. What we want to deal realistically, in almost all of the country, we have a seasonal type of work. There is a peak season and there is a slow season for our business. In California, where I am, it slows down in the winter time. It's wet out. People don't want to think people are going to track in mud or something like that. So work slows down in the winter time. In other places like Arizona, it slows down in the summertime. The snowbirds go away. People don't want to have the front door open, letting the cool air out. So it slows down for them in the summertime. So it depends wherever you're located. There is going to be a slower time of the year. So for this purpose, we're not going to try to fight that. We'll just accept that as a reality. But the way we're going to deal with it is, if you look down at the bottom part, there's the months of the year, is I'm going to assume during 4 months out of the year that we're making half of what the average of the other months are. And you put that all together. So on the chart there, it would be April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November are your full months that you're making your average amount there. And then you look at those other 4 months, and it would be half of that. So if we add that all up, there's normally 52 weeks in a year, and you take out the slow time and make that as half, we're going to do the calculation that there would really only be 40 weeks that we're going to be counting on for work. This means that when it's slow, half of those weeks we aren't going to be working. And it might be you take certain days off, you're only working half days, but we're trying to be realistic. So when we work our numbers, we're going to assume that we're only going to be actually doing labor 40 of the 52 weeks out of the year. In the vision, we had it down as the example that 6 weeks of those would be time that we actually take off away from work. And I would encourage that you take a bulk of that time that you're going to be taking off in the slow time of the year. Don't try to take off weeks at a time in your peak time. That would just not make any sense at all at this point. But that leaves 6 more weeks. Well, what are we going to do with those 6 weeks? The remaining 6 weeks becomes time that you work on the business. This would be working on your equipment, doing the maintenance that's required. That's just as real as a part of the business as cleaning carpets. Also, taking classes, going to seminars, all these things should be considered into how you spend your time over a whole year. So we're going to assume that 6 weeks out of the year you actually spend in some form working on the business, doing the maintenance and helping the business grow. Then the rest of the year, the 40 weeks, we're going to assume that's out creating a revenue, doing labor. So if we take this into account, we divide our total amount that we're trying to reach, which is 132,000, and we divide it by 200 days worth of work. That's 5 days times 40 weeks. That would end up that you need to create a revenue of $660. You're going to then look and say, well, what would the average be? How many jobs would I have to clean to make $660 in a day? And what we're going to use as our example is that our job average is $220. Now this may not be now. Remember, this is 2 or 3 years out in the future that we're looking at this to match our vision statement. So we're going to assume that's pretty realistic, and that really ends up being pretty realistic across the country. So we're going to decide that if we do have a job average of $220 per job, and we do 3 of those in a day, we're going to make $660 per day, and then times the 200 days out of the year, that ends up creating our revenue of $132,000. Hopefully that seems realistic, and you can change those numbers as you find that you're making more or less to reach different profit amounts. The next question is we need to decide how many total clients are we going to need to make this possible. So we have to figure out how often do our customers repeat. As we get into the program, we're going to find that repeating customers is where our profit comes from. And we want to say, what is the average amount of time that it takes for our customers to call us back? Now, you probably have customers who call you maybe every 6 months. Some might call you every 3 or 4 months. But when you add them all up, we're going to assume that the average would come out to be about every 1.5 years that people end up calling you. Hopefully what we're going to be shooting for is the bulk of them are going to be calling every year, but some have good reason of why they can't call every year, and we're going to average it out to try to be realistic that our customers repeat every 18 months. So if this is so, if we work our numbers around, how many customers do we need to have in a year? Now, hopefully I'm not confusing you at this point, but if you look at the chart, this should start making sense. If we're doing 3 jobs per day and we have 200 work days, how many jobs would we need in a year? And the answer to that would be 600 jobs per year that we will end up needing to do. And if our customers repeat every 1.5 years, that means we need 1.5 years worth of customers total as our clientele to make this all work. So half of 600 is 300, and you add those two together, that means the total number of clients that we would need if they had a job average size of $220 is we would need a grand total of 900 customers. This is an incredibly significant number. And the reason why is because this is not an ongoing thing. Once we hit our clientele of 900, we don't have to continue to grow. And that's 900 per van. So how many vans you have, that's the number of clients you need to make your business work. If you use this as a model, you can see that the total number of clients is a variable, and some of the ways that you can adjust that would be if your job average goes up, instead of making $220 as your average, if you're making $440 per job, then you would need half the number of clients. Or if their customers repeated on an annual basis, every 12 months is the average, then you would only need 600 clients. So by changing those numbers, you'll see how many clients do you need to have. This now leads us to a moment of truth. Once we look at these magic numbers, we can now evaluate, is this possible to reach our goals with the numbers that we have laid out? So the first question we want to look at, we have now set up that our daily income that we should need to make this all possible is we need to be able to create $660 day in and day out as the average to make it possible for us to net $100,000 from this business. Is this possible for us to do? Is it possible if I had an unlimited amount of jobs for you to do with what you're currently charging, is it possible to come up and do $660 a day in work? And if the answer is no, then we have to go back to the numbers or find out what can we change to make that possible. You might find that if you're only charging 20 cents per square foot, you'll find that you can't quite get there, that you're only doing $440 a day is only realistic. That would mean if we raise your price that you're charging up to 30 cents per square foot, that now getting $660 a day would be possible. Then we would need to figure out how do we get you so you can raise the price. You see how that works? But if you look at it and say, well, I can't do $660 a day and there's nothing I can change, then this is not a realistic model. So this is how the model is. Is this possible for you to do? What I'm assuming in our example here, this is an owner-operator working from his home, so he has no commute. So what I'm looking at is that we are assuming that he's going to work about 6.5 hours per day cleaning carpets. That's earning an annual revenue or a revenue of $100 per hour from the time he pulls up to the curb at the customer's house until the time he drives away. If he does that and he's doing it for 3 jobs, it's going to take about 6.5 hours of actual labor cleaning from the time he pulls up till the time he drives away. And he's going to be able to hit his number there. And if that takes 6.5 hours, I'm assuming that's going to take probably about an hour and a half of his driving around during the day to get to the various jobs he needs to do. Then he's going to come home, and so far we're up to 8 hours in a day. If you include the 6.5 hours labor, an hour and a half of driving around, and then I'm going to add in another 2 hours that's going to be required that he spends prepping his van, getting it ready for the next day, and doing whatever office work and returning calls. And that should be a very realistic amount of time that a business owner spends in his business every day. But you have to decide, is that feasible or not? And if it isn't, then we have to go back and work on the numbers. So can you do $660 a day, day in and day out? And remember, we're looking out in the future. And can you bring in a revenue of approximately $100 an hour for your labor from the time you pull up to the customer's curb until the time you drive away? If you can't, we have to go back and work on the model and make changes. So remember that to make this work as an owner-operator, you have to have a very small overhead. And also to make it enjoyable, we're going to hope that you have nice working environment. And that's why we described that a little bit in the vision statement of that we're working in nice homes. These aren't trashed out apartments. We're looking for something that makes us want to get up in the morning and go to work. Our next very important issue we need to talk about is to choose a target market. If you were to ask a large group of carpet cleaners, who is your target market? It's very likely they will all come up with an answer, and they're probably going to say high-end residential. And that's pretty good. I mean, you need that to some extent to figure out, well, if you're going to send out advertising, who would you send out your advertising to? If you're looking for residential market, you sure wouldn't want to be sending them out to commercial businesses. If you're looking for residential business, you don't send out advertisements to the wrong place. So everybody has some idea of where they want to have, and they need that for advertising's sake. But generally, that's about the extent of how much thought goes into who is your target market. And this is where many companies get into trouble. Let's ask the question, are all customers the same? And I think if you just think back to some of the customers that you've done work for, the answer is no. Some of them are more pleasurable to work for, some of them are willing to pay more money than others, and some of them have greater profit than others. So there's a lot of differences. We need to go back and look at what is it that makes up the different customers and why are some better than others. The next question we need to ask ourselves is, can we service all types of customers and still make a profit? Many carpet cleaners try to do this. They don't think through who is it that we're actually trying to service. They think instead, oh, just put me in front of a dirty carpet and let me at it, and they're not thinking about, well, who is that customer? And this is what causes many people to work very hard but not have a profit because they haven't thought it through. So we want to take this time just to think through this a little bit, and that will help you understand how this whole program is going to work. I think the best way to look at it first is to step outside of carpet cleaning. Let's just look at another industry, another category, to say, because we can be a little bit more objective when we do that. So as an example, we could look at many ones from hotels to clothing stores, but for our first example, let's look at cars. If we want to go out and purchase a car, we have a whole range of cars that we can choose from. If you ask carpet cleaners, what's the most important determining fact on whether or not they call you, many cleaners are going to say, well, the customers want the lowest price. And they may be thinking on the right terms with the people they've been talking to, but if you look at the market in general, nobody functions that way. So something's wrong with their thinking. If that were true, and we're thinking of cars, we would all be driving around in used Hyundais, because that would probably be one of the least expensive cars you could purchase. But if you look on the road, you'll find that is not the case at all.